Hello, hello. Welcome to CONCH SHELL Productions Artist Chat September 2023. My name is Magaly Colimon-Christopher. I am the producing artistic director of CONCH SHELL Productions. And in case you didn't know, today is September 17th. And it's not just any day. September 17th is Celebrate Black Theater Day.
Yay.
And we are celebrating Black Theater Day today. What is Black Theater Day? Well, honestly, for over 200 years, ever since the African Grove Theater was founded in 1821 in New York City by a Caribbean American writer, director, producer named William Alexander Brown, there has been Black theater in America. If you didn't know, I'm so happy to share this news with you. And today, we are joining a community of I don't know how many theaters, so many theaters who are celebrating Black Theater Day today. So if you see hashtag Black Theater Day all over Instagram, all over Facebook, that is why. And here's why we're doing that. Not only are we celebrating 200 years of great theater, but we're celebrating the future of theater by encouraging you to donate to support Black theater, to help Black theater be thriving for the rest of the history of humanity in America and abroad. So, I am thrilled to have a discussion about creating interactive theater for today's audience. And our guest today is C. Francis Blackchild, and my co host is Santos Collado. So, let me tell you about Santos Collado. Santos Collado is a Puerto Rican and Dominican applied theater practitioner, and he is currently the Workforce Development Associate at Little Island. If you've never been to Little Island, you have to go to a meatpacking district, go all the way west on 13th Street to the water, and you're going to see the most amazing outdoor theater. You'll be surprised, you'll be pleased, and there's amazing gardening. Don't let me go on, but he is working at a beautiful location. And at this location, he's leading, creating, offering high quality jobs through career development programs to New Yorkers, encouraging young BIPOC students of CUNY to learn and earn in the New York City workforce. Welcome, Santos. Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Magali. Yes, I'm so happy to be here and chat. I want to introduce our artist today that we're going to be chatting with, right? It's going to be C. Francis Blackchild. Let me just tell you a little bit about C. Francis here. So, C. Francis Blackchild is a Jamaican American theater artist with expertise in intimacy choreography and theater for social change. She directs, performs, teaches, and writes for and about theater. Right now, Steve Francis is a member of the Screen Actors Guild and has an MFA in playwriting and a PhD in theater. So we're really excited to chat today with Steve Francis.
Welcome, 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 welcome.
It's so much. I'm so happy to be here. I can almost hear the conch shell going off,
Hmm.
calling me to the space. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you. We were looking forward to talking to you. Now, if you've never even thought about interactive theater and you're like, what is interactive theater? And you're going to go do a Google search, don't just stay with us, stay in this conversation. And just think when you typically go to a theater, there, if you've ever heard about what theater is about, we always think about the fourth wall that traditionally separates the performer from the audience physically and verbally and emotionally. Now, see, Francis and Santos, in your experience as a theater artist, tell me, how would you describe interactive theater? Because I took that out of, Wikipedia. So how would you, as a practitioner, describe interactive theater?
Well, I mostly do forum theater, and at the basis, when what Augusto Boal says is that there is no audience.
Who's
The
Augusto Boal?
people,
Who's that? Who's that?
Augusto Boal is the creator of forum theater, which is under the umbrella of theater for the oppressed. And it's much more joyful than the title says. It comes of the idea of pedagogy of the oppressed that started in Brazil. And so it is when we do forum theater, we're basically working from Boal's theory. And his work in theater is never to entertain, but to activate. And so what Boal says is that there's no audience. Everybody is an actor
Hmm.
waiting to be a part of the production. So the audience is filled with spec actors. And one of the things that I really want to make clear to people about interactive theater as we're doing it here is that it is not the theater where people are on stage and then they start to do stuff and they start to come into the audience and you close your eyes and you look down and you're like, don't pick me, pass me. Don't pick me. It's not that at all. What it is that you want to go on stage. No one pulls you on stage. Most of the time, it's people just eager to come and help because what's happening on the stage always needs help.
Give us an example of what's happening on the stage always needs help.
Well, a forum theater production, it's like a play in 3 acts. There is a scripted portion that's played, and it always ends badly. It just always ends badly. And then when it ends badly, the audience has a chance to see, to talk to the characters, not the actors, the characters, to ask them why they behave, why they said, why they won't do something. For instance, I mean, how many times have you wondered why Hamlet was so mean to Ophelia? And you never get a chance to ask, right? What do you mean, get thee to a nunnery? What has she done? But here in interactive theater, you have a chance to say, hey, why are you doing that? And the characters will tell you what's going on with them, that they won't tell the people in the space that they're in. And this gives the audience members information that makes it possible to go on stage and change it. I mean, we've all been in situations where we've seen couples arguing in public or mothers
Mm.
treating their children, and you just be like, man, I really want to separate them and give them a chance to cool off or stuff like that. But you can't, right? Because you don't know. But here, we prepare you to make a difference.
Mm.
And as Boal says, these kinds of performances, engagements are rehearsal for life. Allow you to practice these skills of positive intervention so that you have a sense of what you're capable of when you come upon a situation like that in real life. So,
So now that is part of your Theater for Social Change initiative,
mhm.
right? And how has creating this type of work and bringing it to the African diaspora audience, how has that been for you and you, Santos? How has it been sharing this process? Because Santos, you're studying applied theater, and you're are you researching? Because Santos is currently getting his master's in applied theater. Are you researching Boal's approach or Ferrara's approach?
Both. Yeah, Paulo
Oh,
Freire and Augusto. They're big pillars of the applied theater field that we follow, and there's been tons of learnings from them, and they're the forefounders, you know. So it's been really great to hear C. Francis talk about Boal's work and the forum theater and the theater of the oppressed work that happens here in New York City too. You know, but I think interactive theater is a lot, right? It's this forum theater, but then there's other aspects of
Oh
involving
yeah.
the audience into the work. And to your question, Magaly, about the Caribbean and African diaspora, the the work really allows people to take ownership of the stories that are told. There are a lot of times where playwrights of Latin playwrights or playwrights from the Caribbean, uh, they write stories, our stories, stories about home, stories about immigration, stories about like assimilation, and for the most part, they're played to, in some instances, white audiences. And bringing this interactive theater to Caribbean audiences allows people to take control of their own theater and take control of the answers, of what they would want, how they want to probe a little bit, because it feels close to you. It feels like a situation that
Mm.
I want to jump in. I want to answer this question. I want to offer this perspective that this character is not seeing.
Have you had that experience with the live audience saying, "Wait, hold up, this is my story. Wait, I want to get in it." See, Francis.
Yeah, yes. And the thing, as I said, a form theater performance is in 3 acts, and the audience writes the third act. They just do. They go in and they make changes, and you can't predict how they will make changes. And you write a performance, and we're the work I do is a little different than Boal's structure for a script. For instance, we don't have one protagonist that is being acted upon by oppressive forces. We
Hmm.
have a group of protagonists who are being oppressed and are being oppressive. And
Hmm.
depending on we who is in the audience of a day, the story changes.
Hmm.
So I just did one at a production at Bucknell, and there was a day when it was predominantly African American and people of the diaspora, and that story was very different. For that particular performance, there were two people of African descent, two characters of African descent, and the audience, the spec actors, were really focused on allowing each person, each Black person to see their blind spot about the other, right? And so that's a totally, you know, so that's a totally different performance than when there no or there's not enough, there's not uh, enough people of color in the audience to interact, and then the story changes because it will shift to another person and another person's behavior and working on that person's blind spots, and so it really changes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, I was just going to say that you have like the models there where you follow a protagonist along, or you can follow the allies that are involved in the oppressive state that the protagonist is in, right? If for instance someone is being bullied in school, and that leads them to dropping out, and then maybe going down a path that is going to lead to destructive behavior, right? Maybe there's allies in there that can intervene in certain moments and say, hey, I saw what happened here and I want to say something about that. So when you take it to different audiences, sometimes the audience can take on the perspective of the protagonist because they share that identity. They've been in those circumstances and interactions in their life. Or they can take on an identity of a caretaker or a bystander or any kind of person around that can intervene and act on their behalf. So that's a great point about how it can adjust to the audience that's there. And so my next question for you, C. Francis, is how do you prepare the audience for that kind of interaction where you say you're going to come on and you're going to be active and you're going to be a vital piece of this theater we're doing?
in in general, the structure of our performance is welcoming to the audience. One thing, no matter what happens when an audience member enters, they will get applause. We will make whatever happen on stage, we will make it something useful. So when a performance starts, it's facilitated. So it starts with a facilitator, or in Boal's language, a joker, who is speaking with the audience. And one of the things we do is then we prepare the audience's mind to be open. So we do a classic handshake exercise. What do you see? Why do you think that? And then we remove one person from the picture. And so you have this extended hand. And then the question is now use your imagination. What could that be? And then we go back to the idea that you don't know what's happening because you don't have the whole story, and you never have the whole story. And that is an interactive thing. They have to tell us the answer. We also get them to do exercises where they can be successful and fail, because we want them to get used to failing without any pressure. It's important to fail, right?
Mhm.
You can't make
Well,
change
we think so
without
as
failing.
artists. Yeah, we think so as artists, but how do you make the new generation that's always being told no matter what you do, you're a success? How do
Magaly,
they react to that concept of failure?
can you make the sign? Can you make a plus sign with your hand? Okay, excellent. You're good at that. Great. Great. Can you make a circle with your hand? Your other hand? Wow, that's amazing. Can you make a plus sign with one hand and a circle with the next
Mm,
simultaneously? Can you? Can you?
uh,
Can you? Can you?
not really. No, I
Exactly.
failed.
And so everyone except for musicians fail together, and there's no
Mm,
consequence.
Yeah,
So there, I know if you're working with college students, they all want A's, they all want to be perfect. And usually you're working in the place where they live. So they don't want to make a fool of themselves. So you
mm,
have to kind of open them up to being wrong without
mm.
consequence. And that's how we do it,
I think
right?
an important thing there is that this is theater for social change. It's theater where you can rehearse the change, right? You can rehearse the changes you want to see in the world, and you practice for the revolution, as they say. So it's okay to fail. You can think of it as especially the theater artists who are here watching today. Think of it as a rehearsal. You're in your rehearsal. This is a time where you want to try the things. This is a time where you want to go big to then scale back and see how did this action that I took, how did it land? What were the consequences? What did the other actors on stage play with? Like, what did they, as they call problematizing? Like, how did they kind of make that my action? How do they make it make sense in the world? Like, okay, this action, you can think that's a good idea, but have you thought about this consequence? What about that little consequence? What about this action that now this has caused? So all of that happens is the purpose of forum theater. So if you take away the aspect of failing or passing and like what that means to us nowadays in the 21st century and like this kind of binary culture that we have of good and bad, and if you take all that away, you say this is for rehearsal, then you get a
It's a
different
part of a
perspective.
process.
Exactly.
So a few conversations ago, an artist chat, we were talking about how we need to have the room to fail as artists, the room to discover in the process as opposed to always constantly focusing on the finished product being absolutely perfect and who defines what perfect is. So, when you do an interactive theater piece, is there a beginning end time or the end time is whenever it happens? How do you know when the end comes?
It depends on who needs the room next. It depends on how much time we're given. I mean, a performance can, if you give me 50 minutes, I'll get it done in 50 minutes. If you, but I will not be happy. If you give me more time, I will use more time. What happens actually, it's the number of interventions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what happens is, the facilitator, and you really need to have good facilitation, because it is the facilitation that will allow people to take the risk of stepping forward in their community. And no matter what people do, they are applauded. And even when the answer is not exactly, you try to figure out how to make it a teaching moment or a moment of success. I mean, one of our big questions we started with the handshake exercise is, tell me as objectively, what do you see? And what we're actually looking for is an interpretive answer, an interpretation of the picture. And we'll get it. And sometimes we have ridiculously smart audience who will just keep giving us, objective responses. And when we get that person who is a little interpretive, we're like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's not what I asked, but that's what I need to go on. And so when people give you the wrong answer, you are just ridiculously grateful for them.
Oh yeah.
And it's always a success. That all contributions contribute to the learning process.
Yeah.
This is really exciting. It sounds like the social change is healing the barriers that separate us.
It
feels like that to me.
The thing of change is not that
okay,
easy.
okay.
But it is. But actually, that whole process is about making people comfortable in stepping forward. There's so many times we see things and we are uncomfortable stepping forward. And before we ask people to go in, I will say, you don't have to get it right. All we ask is that you try. Because the way things are now, nothing good will come of it. So all we need is that you try. You don't have to get it right. And you can stay in as long as you want, and you can leave whenever you feel like leaving. And so they have agency, and they have a kind of psychological support, because they realize that even if they don't get it right, the trying is the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, we spoke a little bit about how to enter the space and prepare the audience for it with the handshake game, the interactiveness, the facilitator coming out and introducing, hey, this is going to be a play you're going to see and whatnot. And the 3 acts, building upon the play that the actors have done, and then the spect actors come in, right? Now, after you build all that, how do you exit? How do you leave from there?
So what happens is that the second act is a conversation with the characters, so that the spect actors can have enough information to know things that the other folks don't know. So when they come in, they can change things. After each change, we do a little debrief. How did it go? Why did it work? Da 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 da. And even when it doesn't work the way they wanted to, or the way they saw it in their head working, or it's still a change, right? It's still a disruption of whatever it is. And we thank them. Always thank, always applause. And then they go back to their seat and someone comes. And then when the time is out, we then thank them again. And we say, we couldn't do it without you. And a really important thing is, because as of this moment, they have not met the actors. They've only met the characters, and often the actors are from the community. And usually we need them to behave really badly, sometimes like racist, sometimes like sexist, sometimes like bullies. And so it's very important that we separate the character from the actors. So we allow the actors to introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. And then we thank people again and we applaud. We say goodbye.
So, are there any obstacles in your experience of producing interactive theater for today's audience? Have you experienced any obstacles to doing this work? Because it sounds like this work is very grassroots. From what I'm hearing, I haven't experienced this type of theater, so I'm really looking forward to experiencing it. So, share with us the obstacles that you've experienced in producing.
So sometimes you're asked to come into a space where the audience don't want to change, where the audience feel as if the subject or the behaviors you're putting forward is fine and they have no reason to change, and why would they? And so you can get that kind of pushback. And because we are social beings, if you have one or two loud people disparaging the process, it can be very disruptive. Again, you use what you have and just say, okay, that's interesting. How has it made the situation any better?
So it's a yes and experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a yes and experience. And you can't make people who don't want to change. When sometimes I get a little bit about the work and I think to myself, well, everyone seems to be going along with this and they seem to know the right thing to do. Why am I doing this?
Hmm.
And I'll speak to the person who's brought me in and they'll say, the people who spoke know the right answers. The ones who didn't. So that's who you're working for. And so even in a situation where you have an audience bullying, because a couple of loud, there are people there, at least I comfort myself with that thought. There are people there who want the change and want to see what the possibilities are. They are just not as loud and not as confident as people who are being obstacles.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But you have to
Hmm.
make sure you're speaking to the community. You have to make sure that this is not a top down process. The professional, the trained person has the skill set, but they don't have the information, right? And so when you go into a community, you have them tell you what the problems are, and you have them tell you who the problems are. And one of the things you have to be very careful about is when you talk about this process, some people think it's a chance to get back at people and bully
Hmm.
them and show them how horrible they are. And that's never the way we do it, which is different from Boal in the sense that the oppressive, we never have anyone that's purely oppressive, right?
Hmm.
And so we just allow they will have to be comfortable with the fact that the people they don't like have a legitimate point of view that has to be represented and respected. That's the
Yeah,
hardest thing.
absolutely. You don't want an oppressive character there that is a caricature, someone who just is not realistic in real life, because oppressive people in real life, they also have families, they also have backgrounds, they also have rooted things in them that cause them to act the way that they act, so it's humanizing that behavior and really creating a dialogue. That's what applied theater is all about too. It's about creating these spaces that dialogue can come. So even if we didn't get to the end of the root of the problem in this play or in this foreign piece, it is still the dialogue that was created that was the purpose of it.
That's the performance is not the point. It's the
Hmm.
conversations
I
that
see.
the organizations that bring you in can have after. Because what we try to do is to take problematic behaviors off a specific body. So if someone is saying to you, you are and you are and you are, it's not only is it hard to hear, it makes you defensive. and
Hmm.
and you can't hear it literally. And so by taking parts of those behaviors and putting them away from you, you may have a chance of seeing it better. And so the real so interactive theater form theater performances are the beginning of a conversation.
So, in your viewpoints as practitioners, applied theater practitioners, interactive theater practitioners, social art for social change practitioners on Black Theater Day. What would be your statement about the future benefits of interactive theater for the African diaspora and the Caribbean diaspora audience? Because this is for the audience, this is not to the audience. Based on what you're saying, this is for the audience.
Yeah, it is a chance for people to come and develop their thoughts. It's a chance for people to be active in their learning. Theater is political, so anything you put down, it comes from a person's experience, right? It comes from what they believe. It comes from their values, as a playwright. So interactive theater is a chance where everyone can come together and create something together and share your opinions, share your culture, share your background, and especially within some of my identities as a Puerto Rican and Dominican artist. I know a lot of folks in my family and in my culture that are deeply rooted in the way they do things and
Mm.
in their culture, in their upbringing, in their what people said was right or what's wrong. And a lot of my generation's learning is to reprogram our minds in terms of what we think as a second, first generation, 1.5 generation American here in New York City. What do I think is the way I do things? What do I think is right? Reprogramming that mind when I realize that some of these things that I believe is rooted in white supremacy, is rooted in a capitalistic mindset, is rooted in the things that like a settler's kind of uh, mindset. So when you reprogram that mind, when you start thinking differently and experiencing the world in different ways, you're more open to different life, right? A different life, a different outcome. And so I think interactive theater does that for folks too. It de-roles themselves from this traditional American theater where you sit down, you're quiet, and you listen to whatever the actors speak at you. This kind of top-down approach, right? Where the actors hold all the knowledge that the playwright has and they give it to the audience. But instead, you're out there, you're actively pursuing something. You're going towards it. You're creating that conversation. And I think that's something that can allow folks to connect more with other generations, can be open more to accepting the changes that are going around in the world. So I think that's going to be a great benefit for the Caribbean diaspora.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is that as members of the diaspora, we look alike. And when people look like you have an expectation for them to have the same perspective on several different things. And you do. There are things that you have in common, but then there are things that you have differently. And when someone who doesn't look like you thinks differently from you, you're like, whatever. But when your family member is starting to talk about a perspective that you're like, and that can cause, when expectations aren't met, it can cause hurt, disappointment, and hostility. And one of the things that I've always really wanted is a conversation between different members of the diaspora, between Caribbeans and African Americans, because I've heard them talk. They got some misconception both sides, and a lot of those misconceptions aren't helpful. And it would be really good for them to just, say the things that they think and continue the conversation after they've dropped you know, and that I think a piece like that I think would be very useful.
Fantastic. So Buzzing223 asks a question. I'd like to know if any of your theater productions are streamed. So C. Francis, do you have any of your productions streamed online? Do you have a website where people can check out this style of theater making?
Um, I have a weird website and it's private. It's a weird professional website that's like private, but I don't. It can be a little bit technical critical in the sense that I work with students a lot, and
Mm,
I have them say terrible things that needs to be said. And the way people can cut clips and present them in ways, I feel as if that can leave students very vulnerable. No, not
mm,
students, that can leave people very vulnerable. And so I don't have anything streaming because of that.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. Remember, these are spaces that we want to cultivate that are going to be safe and brave spaces where people can interact and share their opinions and even just maybe take on a perspective that's not their own, just to explore a little bit in or push themselves a little bit further than they would normally. So for that reason, there's a lot of lack of documentation of this work. However, Theater of the Oppressed (NYC) is a group that is doing this kind of work out here in New York City. They're having an event, a festival, their annual TO NYC festival that's going to be September 28th through the 30th. I believe it is at Theater Lab. And they do a lot of work with communities facing discrimination to inspire action. And if you check out their website, Theater of the Oppressed NYC, yeah, September 28th to the 30th is their festival. I believe I will try to be there. I might have a conflict, but I'm going to try to be there too. So if you see me, say hi. But definitely I think that's a great chance to go and experience it for yourself and just to be a part of it.
So is that nyc.org or nyc.o
It
for
is,
con,
yes,
or is it theater with an re, or is it theater with an er? Because I
it's
put re.
it is Theater with RE, and their website is
Okay.
tonyc.nyc. So
Oh, TONYC. So I'm going to
yeah,
correct that. TONYC.com
and .nyc I have here.
dot NYC.
Yeah, never heard
So
of
there
that
you
one,
go.
but
Ignore what
there
I
you
put
go.
in there. And so here is also, I found this website called No Proscenium if you want to explore immersive theater, because we didn't go into that, but that is another form of theater that may be engaging for future audiences, because that's what we're talking about here, right? Future audiences. We've had fantastic audiences in the past, but the theater world is concerned. I mean, if you've been awake these past 6 months, you've been hearing theaters are shutting down across America, across Europe. They're feeling that the audience is like totally disengaged. And how can this be the theater for the future? Do you feel that this interactive theater, even though it is intimate, do you feel it could be the theater for the future? That's a question for both Santos and cfrancis. Is it too intimate to be the theater for the future? Or is it exactly what the theater needs
Yeah, I wouldn't
moving
say
towards
it's
the
too
future?
intimate. I think and I know Sue Francis has a thought on it. I have a quick one. I think it's not too intimate. I think theater often changes what the purpose of theater is for, if it's spectacle, if it's commercial, is it this or that over the years. And
Or ritual?
or ritual, yeah, or community building, and there's no reason why it can't be all of it in one. Um, so is it the theater of the future? I think, yeah, it depends on where the future goes. It depends on what the countries and the climate of the world is and what is needed at the time and what takes the forefront. Is it commercial theater? Is it spectacle? Is it ritual? What kind of theater takes the forefront? Um, but yeah, I think it is a part of the theater of the future as well.
I think it depends on what you mean by theater, because
Mm.
um, Theater of the Oppressed troops are huge. They're all over the world, and they have a lot of community function. They are educational. They're great because a lot of smart people don't necessarily read or write, and they can bring issues to them in that way. And this process is used in HR, it's used in conflict resolution, it's used in all kinds of ways. So it's all over the place. It's just not profitable in that way. And it's as a thing of replacing or commercial theater, I think it's interesting, but also very dangerous because
Mm,
I like to think we do it with a pure heart, with good intention, but it does have the potential of being very propagandistic
yeah.
and prop, and because of that, when a huge commercial aspect becomes a part of it, the what is it there for? Is it there to be profitable, or is it there to make changes?
Yeah.
And who is the community whose perspective you are putting forward when you take it?
Mm.
It moves out of small community
Mhm.
venues into large Broadway things.
Yeah. Because
Um,
giving a voice to the masses is basically the opposite of the current construct of our society, if you really think about it. Or you could say it's exactly how our current society is functioning with social media. With, is it the opposite or is it the exact same? And
but it's not giving the voice to the masses, it's giving the voice to communities. And
ah,
when you give voice to the masses, in my perspective, which is narrow and specific, you can mute out the voices of specific communities.
yes.
And so
Okay.
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to allow communities to hear themselves
Mhm.
and different aspects of themselves.
The unique voices of each individual as opposed to the blanket voice.
Absolutely.
Individual communities, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow, we could keep talking about this forever, but we're not. I'm sorry. I think that I think that you need to follow everyone's work. I think that each and every I think C. Francis and Santos, they've both given you some wonderful insights to operate off of. So thank you so much, C. Francis Blackchild, for being our guest
Oh, it's
today.
been a
And
pleasure.
Santos Collado, you thank you. Snap snap for the co-hosting. Um, so this is it for our September chat, but it is not it for September programming for CONCH SHELL Productions. I want you to know that in addition to celebrating this amazing Black Theater Day, September 17th, we are also going to be providing writers. Has anybody out there written a TV series? Because if you have written it or are writing it during this period of fighting for the right of an artist to make money during the strike period, if you're inspired to be writing a TV series, you need to learn how to pitch it. And we're going to be having a writer's workshop next weekend, September 22nd to 23rd, Friday and Saturday. Go to our website, conchshellproductions.com, conchshellproductions.com to find out about our event. It's an online event, so you could be in Australia and attend. Believe me, you can be in Australia and attend. Go to our website. You can choose to be a YouTube viewer, which means you're not participating in the workshop on camera, or you could be in the Zoom room. Two different price points. Both experiences are going to give you the tools that you need to know how to pitch your TV series and take your life to the next level and own your voice and tell your unique voice. And as you know, at Conch Shell Productions, we're all about empowering people of the Caribbean diaspora and the Caribbean to own their voice. But we're all about empowering all people to own your voice through your art form. So once again, happy Black Theater Day. And join us in celebrating 200 years of theater by donating $5. $5 to Conch Shell Productions today, or $5 to every Black theater that you love, and support us. And that's how we'll be able to continue. Have a blessed Sunday. Have a fantastic week. And I'll see you on Friday. And thanks again. Thanks so much to our guest artists and our fantastic co hosts. Thank you.